The business class cabin of Delta Air Flight 782 was usually calm and quiet, but today the peace shattered the moment a baby's loud cries echoed through the air. Passengers shifted uncomfortably, flight attendants exchanged quick glances, and in the middle of it all sat Ethan Walker, a young American multimillionaire tech founder, holding his 6-month-old daughter, Ava, close to his chest. Ethan looked exhausted, not the kind of exhaustion that comes from work or business meetings, but the kind that comes from sleepless nights and a heart still grieving. Just 3 months earlier, his wife had passed away, leaving him to raise Ava alone. No amount of money or success could prepare him for moments like this. Ava cried louder, kicking her little feet and trembling with frustration. Ethan tried everything: her bottle, her pacifier, her favorite stuffed toy, rocking her gently, even singing a shaky lullaby through tired, teary eyes. But nothing worked. Then, from across the aisle, a warm, steady voice broke through the chaos. "Excuse me, would you like me to try?" Before the story continues, make sure you like this video, subscribe, and turn on notifications so you never miss emotionally powerful stories like this one. Ethan turned, eyes red and unsure, and saw Jordan Mitchell standing beside him. She looked calm in a way that instantly softened the frayed edges of the moment. Late 20s, warm brown skin, curly hair tied back into a low puff, wearing a simple dark green sweater and jeans that didn't match the luxury vibe of the cabin, but she carried herself with a confidence that made her presence feel instantly steady. There was something reassuring in her expression, the kind of kindness that didn't come from politeness but from instinct. "I'm not sure," Ethan said helplessly, shifting Ava so she could breathe better. "She hasn't stopped crying since takeoff." His voice cracked on the last word, and he quickly looked down, embarrassed. Jordan didn't judge him. She didn't even hesitate. She offered a small, encouraging smile. "I've been a full-time nanny for years. Babies usually settle right down with me." Ethan let out a shaky breath, the kind that came from trying to hold yourself together for too long. Too drained to argue, too desperate for relief. He nodded with a tiny motion that carried the weight of a man holding on by one last thread. Jordan gently slipped her arms under Ava, lifting the baby with a tenderness that made even the crankiest passengers soften their expressions. Ava's little body was tense, trembling with frustration, but Jordan brought her close, closer than Ethan had dared to, as if she knew babies needed to feel not just held, but claimed. She pressed Ava's ear against her heartbeat and began to hum a soft, old Southern lullaby, the same one her grandmother used to sing to her when she was small. Jordan's voice wasn't loud. It wasn't showy. It was warm, deep, and steady, the kind of sound that settles in your bones like a safe place you forgot you needed. The first few notes drifted through the cabin, and the change was almost immediate. Ava's cries softened from sharp wails to small hiccuping sobs. Passengers who had been glaring suddenly leaned back in surprise. The flight attendants exchanged wide-eyed glances, slowly relaxing their shoulders. And Ethan felt his heart drop into his stomach. Because for the first time since takeoff, his daughter wasn't screaming. Ava blinked up at Jordan sleepily, her body loosening, her tiny fingers gripping Jordan's sweater like she'd been waiting for this exact comfort. The crying faded, then faded more, then disappeared completely. Within minutes, Ava was fast asleep in Jordan's arms, her cheek pressed against the rhythm of that steady heartbeat and that old Southern song that soothed generations before her. The cabin, once a tense bubble of frustration, softened instantly. The man in seat 4C, who had been muttering under his breath, let out a sigh of relief. A woman across the aisle smiled, mouthing, "Thank you," even though Jordan wasn't looking at her. You could feel the peace settle over everyone, like the entire plane exhaled at the same time. Ethan stared at his daughter, then at the woman holding her. He had no words. He had money, success, companies, properties, private jets, but in this moment, none of that mattered. Only one thing did. Someone had stepped into the chaos and saved him from drowning in it. "You must have magic in your voice," he whispered, genuinely overwhelmed. Jordan chuckled softly, brushing a gentle thumb across Ava's small back. "No magic," she said quietly. "Just patience, love, and a heartbeat that tells a baby, 'You're safe now.'" Her words struck something deep in Ethan's chest. Something tender. Something he had been trying to hide behind exhaustion and grief. He swallowed hard, blinking quickly, because the last thing he wanted was for strangers to see him cry. But Jordan saw it. She saw everything: his tired hands, his shaking breath, the sadness behind his eyes. She didn't comment on it. She just gave him a look that said, "You're doing the best you can." And for the first time in months, Ethan believed it. Jordan kept rocking Ava gently, humming another soft verse, and the baby seemed to melt further into her arms. Ethan watched, unsure whether to feel grateful, embarrassed, or completely undone by the simplicity of the moment. A stranger had stepped in and given his daughter something he couldn't, at least not right now: peace. And deep inside, he wondered why this woman, someone he had never met before, felt so naturally connected to his child. Something about it didn't just feel comforting. It felt fated. For a moment, Ethan forgot he was on a plane. Forgot about the passengers, the noise, the pressure of being a public figure who always had to appear in control. All he saw was his daughter, finally resting, and the woman who somehow made that possible with nothing but her arms and a lullaby. Jordan didn't seem to want attention. She didn't take out her phone. She didn't look around to see if anyone was watching. She simply rocked Ava with the quiet confidence of someone who had done this 1,000 times before, her breath sinking naturally with the babies. A flight attendant approached them quietly, her voice barely above a whisper. "Ma'am, that was incredible. Thank you." Jordan smiled, but only with her eyes, the kind of smile that said she didn't want praise. "Just doing what I can," she replied softly. When the attendant walked away, Ethan leaned closer, lowering his voice so he wouldn't disturb Ava. "I don't know how you did that," he murmured. "I've tried everything for weeks. She barely sleeps unless she's exhausted from crying." Jordan looked down at the peacefully sleeping baby and brushed a curl off Ava's forehead. "She misses her mama," she said gently, not as a question, but as a truth she could feel in her bones. The words hit Ethan like a weight he wasn't ready for. His throat tightened. He cleared it quietly, staring at his hands. "Yeah," he whispered. "She does. I do too." Jordan didn't respond right away. She didn't fill the silence with cliches or empty sympathy. She just looked at him with genuine understanding. "Grief hits babies, too," she said softly. "They can't explain what they feel. They just cry." Ethan closed his eyes for a moment, letting her words sink into all the places he didn't talk about, not even with friends. He opened them again slowly. "How do you know so much?" he asked. Jordan adjusted Ava gently, making sure her little head was supported. "I worked with twins for 3 years. A little boy and girl. Premature, colicky, barely slept the first 6 months. I got really good at this." She smiled softly, looking down at Ava with a warmth that was almost maternal. "Babies need a heartbeat they trust. Sometimes that's all it takes." Ethan watched her closely. She wasn't just good, she was gifted. There was something almost intuitive about the way she held Ava, something that came from deep experience and deeper empathy. After a few minutes of quiet, Jordan glanced at Ethan. "Would you like me to keep holding her for a while? You look like you need a break." The offer was so simple, so human, that Ethan almost broke down right there. But he managed a nod, his voice barely steady. "If you don't mind, I'd appreciate that more than you know." Jordan smiled gently. "I don't mind at all." She positioned herself more comfortably, settling into her seat with Ava still sleeping soundly against her chest. Ethan watched, unsure whether he should sit next to her or give her space, but she motioned to the seat beside her. "You can sit here if you want. I don't bite," she said with a playful tilt of her eyebrow. He let out a small, tired laugh. It felt good to laugh, and slid into the empty seat. For the first time in months, he wasn't holding the weight of the world. Jordan glanced at him, her voice soft. "You're doing a good job, you know." Ethan blinked slowly. "I don't feel like it." "You don't have to feel like it," she said. "Good parents rarely do." He looked at her for a long moment, trying to understand how a stranger could read him so easily. "Did you always want to be a nanny?" he asked. Jordan shrugged lightly. "I always wanted to help families. My mom ran a daycare out of our house when I was a kid. I grew up around babies. I learned early that they don't need perfection. They just need presence." Her words settled into Ethan like a warm blanket on a cold day. He rubbed the back of his neck, letting himself breathe for what felt like the first time since his wife passed. "I've been trying," he said quietly. "I really have. But every day feels like I'm failing her." Jordan looked at him gently. "You're here. You're holding her. You're trying. That's not failure. That's love." The simple truth of it made Ethan's chest ache. He looked at Ava's tiny hand curled against Jordan's sweater and felt something soften inside him. A small, fragile piece of hope he didn't expect. A voice from the row behind them suddenly cut through the moment. "Well, thank God someone finally shut the baby up." The woman sounded annoyed, not grateful. Jordan stiffened slightly. Ethan tensed. But before either of them could respond, the woman continued in a sharp tone. "Honestly, some people shouldn't travel with infants if they can't control them." A few passengers murmured agreement. Ethan's jaw tightened. His face flushed. He opened his mouth to defend himself, but Jordan spoke before he could. Her voice wasn't loud, but it was firm. "Ma'am," she said calmly, turning just enough to meet the woman's eyes. "This baby is grieving her mother. She's not being difficult. She's hurting, and her father is doing everything he can." The woman blinked, startled. She opened her mouth, but no words came. Jordan's voice stayed steady, kind but unwavering. "Sometimes all a child needs is compassion, and sometimes the adults need it, too." The woman slowly looked away, embarrassed. A few nearby passengers shifted awkwardly. One man whispered, "She's right." Another nodded silently. Ethan stared at Jordan, stunned by her quiet strength. "Thank you," he said softly. Jordan shrugged like it was nothing. Some things need to be said. For a while, they sat in peaceful silence. The hum of the plane, the dim cabin lights, the steady breathing of a sleeping baby, it all created a strangely intimate moment. Ethan glanced at Jordan again, feeling a pull he couldn't name. She wasn't just kind. She felt safe, familiar, almost like someone who had walked into his life exactly when he needed her. He didn't know why he felt that. Not yet. But something told him this moment was only the beginning. Jordan continued holding Ava with the same steady warmth, and Ethan found himself watching the two of them like he was watching a scene he didn't want to forget. The cabin lights dimmed as the plane settled into cruising altitude, casting a soft glow across Jordan's face. Ava slept peacefully, her tiny breaths rising and falling in perfect rhythm with Jordan's heartbeat. It felt unreal, how quickly everything had shifted from chaos to calm. Ethan rested his head against the seat, though he didn't close his eyes. He didn't want to waste even a second of the quiet. "I haven't seen her sleep this peacefully," he whispered, afraid to disrupt the moment. Jordan looked down at the baby with genuine affection. "She's a sweet girl," she murmured. "Just tired. Just scared." Babies feel everything, even things we think they can't understand. Ethan exhaled slowly. "There's a lot she doesn't understand yet." Jordan studied him for a moment. "You don't have to tell me. Not unless you want to." He paused, staring at his hands again. For so long, he'd been bottled up, holding everything inside because he was afraid if he said the words out loud, they'd hurt even more. But something about Jordan made everything inside him loosen. She wasn't pushing. She wasn't prying. She was simply there. And maybe that was exactly what he needed. "My wife, Emily, she died 3 months ago," he said quietly. "Complications after the birth. Everything was fine at first. She was recovering. She was smiling. She was happy. And then, suddenly she wasn't." Jordan's eyes softened with deep empathy. "I'm so sorry," she whispered. "I can't imagine how hard that must have been." Ethan continued, his voice unsteady. "Ava was only 3 months old. I remember holding her while they tried to save Emily. I kept thinking, babies aren't supposed to know what loss feels like. But she does. She feels it every day. I see it in her eyes. She cries at night, like she's searching for someone she'll never get to remember." Jordan nodded gently. Babies grieve, too. They know when love disappears. They feel the absence before they can name it. That truth made Ethan's chest tighten. He swallowed hard. "It's been just me and her ever since. I don't want to mess this up. But some days," he shook his head helplessly. "Some days I don't know what I'm doing." Jordan looked at him with sincerity so deep it made him feel exposed and understood all at once. "You're doing more than enough. You're showing up. You're loving her. That's all a parent can do." Ethan let her words sink in like medicine he hadn't known he needed. After a moment, he cleared his throat softly. "What about you? You mentioned you worked with twins. Do you still nanny full-time?" Jordan paused, her thumb brushing lightly over Ava's back. "Not recently," she admitted. "The twins moved out of state with their parents. After that, I took a break." There was something in her tone, something unspoken. Ethan caught it immediately. "Did something happen?" he asked gently. Jordan hesitated. It wasn't the kind of hesitation that comes from hiding something wrong. It was the kind that comes from deciding whether to reopen an old wound. She sighed softly, her eyes drifting down. A few years ago, before the twins, I lost a baby. Ethan froze, surprised. Jordan continued quietly, her voice delicate. I wasn't far along, but it was still real. Still enough for me to imagine a future. A baby room. A little heartbeat. She pressed her lips together, steadying herself. Then one day it was gone. Just gone. And part of me never fully recovered. Holding babies helped. Caring for families helped. But I haven't known what to do with that empty place inside me. Ethan didn't know what to say at first. He hadn't expected her to share something so raw. Thank you, he said softly, for trusting me with that. Jordan gave a small nod. Sometimes strangers feel safer than the people we know. There was something painfully true about that, something Ethan understood all too well. For a while, they sat in silence. Not awkward, not heavy, just honest. Ava shifted slightly, snuggling deeper into Jordan's chest, and Jordan instinctively adjusted her hand supporting the baby's back with the skill of someone who knew exactly what to do. When Jordan looked up again, Ethan was already watching her. You're incredible with her, he said. She smiled. You're incredible for her. Their eyes held for a moment too long. Long enough for something unspoken to pass between them. Not romantic. Not yet. Something more gentle. More human. A shared recognition of two people carrying different kinds of grief, who somehow felt lighter sitting beside each other. After a moment, Jordan cleared her throat lightly. Where are you two traveling? She asked. Ethan rubbed the back of his neck. I have a meeting with a potential investor tomorrow. It's my first trip with Ava. Jordan raised an eyebrow gently. Ballsy. Ethan snorted a small laugh. Or stupid. Or brave, she added. Very brave. He looked at her and shook his head with a smile that didn't feel forced for once. What about you? Where are you headed? Jordan hesitated again, but this time, her answer surprised him. A2, she said. I'm starting over. New city, new chapter. Ethan blinked. Really, she said softly. I thought maybe I'd find something, or someone, that feels like purpose again. The words lingered between them, soft and promising. The turbulence light came on, the plane shuddering slightly. Jordan held Ava tighter, ensuring the baby didn't wake. Ethan instinctively reached out, steadying Jordan's arm without thinking, and when he realized what he'd done, he quickly pulled back. Jordan didn't react with awkwardness. Instead, she gave him a small, knowing smile. You're allowed to lean on people, she whispered, even if it's just for a moment. As the plane continued toward Los Angeles, Ethan couldn't shake the feeling that he wasn't just sitting beside a kind stranger. He was sitting beside the first sign of peace he'd felt in months. And something deep in him whispered that fate wasn't done with them yet. Hours passed, but the cabin remained peaceful. Ava slept soundly against Jordan, her tiny fingers curling and uncurling with each gentle breath. Ethan found himself staring at the two of them, marveling at the contrast between the chaos from earlier and this newfound calm. The other passengers had slowly relaxed too, some even stealing quiet glances at the scene, unable to believe the transformation. A few whispered to each other, commenting on the woman's incredible skill, though no one dared to interrupt. It was like watching a miracle unfold in real time. Ethan finally leaned back, letting himself exhale. I can't believe she's asleep, he murmured. Jordan's soft smile met his gaze. She trusts me, she said simply. That's all it took. He nodded slowly, the weight of those words sinking in. It wasn't just trust. It was comfort, it was patience, it was connection. Something he had been missing in these months of sleepless nights and silent grieving. You make it look so easy, Ethan said after a pause, his voice quiet but full of awe. Jordan shook her head gently. It's never easy. Every baby is different. Some days, you try everything and nothing works. You just have to be present. Listen, feel, and wait. And when it finally works, it feels like magic, even though it's really just love. Ethan smiled faintly. There was something profound in the simplicity of her words. All the money in the world couldn't teach him that lesson, yet here was someone showing it without a hint of arrogance. The plane's service cart rolled by, and a flight attendant peeked down the aisle. Would you like anything to drink, sir? Ethan shook his head. No, thank you. I'm fine right now. Jordan glanced at him, a knowing look in her eyes. "You're finally letting yourself breathe," she observed. Ethan nodded slowly. It was true. For the first time since Emily's death, he felt a moment of relief, almost like he could exhale the weight he'd been carrying alone. Minutes turned into hours. Ava slept uninterrupted, occasionally stirring but never crying. Jordan hummed softly under her breath, keeping the baby calm, while Ethan found himself opening up in ways he hadn't anticipated. He told her small stories about Ava's first laughs, her stubborn little habits, the things that made him both smile and ache simultaneously. Jordan listened, never interrupting, offering occasional nods or a soft comment that showed she was present but never judgmental. At some point, the conversation shifted naturally. "I think L.A. is going to be good for both of us," Jordan said quietly, brushing a curl from Ava's forehead. Ethan turned to her, curiosity piqued. "What makes you say that?" She looked out the window, her voice soft but sure. "Starting over gives you a chance to rewrite your story," she said. "Sometimes the best chapters begin when you least expect them." Ethan considered her words. He had always been someone who meticulously planned every detail, every meeting, every pitch. But life hadn't planned this grief. And yet, somehow, maybe Jordan was right. The unexpected moments were sometimes the ones that changed everything. Jordan glanced at him, her expression unreadable but warm. "And sometimes, the people you meet along the way make it easier." Ethan's throat tightened. There was no sarcasm, no hidden meaning, just pure sincerity. He realized, almost unwillingly, that he wanted to keep this feeling, to hold on to it, to let someone in, even if only a little. The plane began its descent toward Los Angeles. Ethan adjusted his seatbelt, glancing at Jordan, who gently shifted Ava in her arms, preparing the baby for the landing. "We're almost there," she said softly. Ethan nodded, but something inside him hesitated. He didn't want this flight to end, not yet. For hours, he'd been able to set aside the loneliness, the panic, the endless worry, and simply exist in a space of calm and care. Jordan had given him that gift, and he didn't know how to thank her enough. As the wheels touched down, the cabin vibrated with motion, and passengers began gathering their belongings. Ethan held back for a moment, not ready to move yet, while Jordan carefully adjusted Ava and stood. "You're ready?" she asked. Ethan swallowed, his voice catching. I think so." Together, they walked toward the aisle, moving slowly to avoid waking Ava. People gave them curious looks, but the expressions were now filled with admiration rather than irritation. A few whispered, nodding at Jordan, clearly impressed by what she had accomplished. At the exit, Jordan turned to Ethan and gave him a small smile. "You know," she said softly, "it's amazing how resilient babies are. And fathers too, if they're willing to learn." Ethan chuckled quietly, the sound rusty but genuine. "I've learned a lot today," he admitted. Jordan's smile deepened. "Good. That's the first step." He looked down at Ava, still sleeping peacefully, and then back at Jordan. "Thank you," he said sincerely, "for everything. I don't know how I would have managed without you." Jordan shrugged slightly, modest as ever. "You'd have managed eventually. But I'm glad I could help. That's what matters." For a moment, they stood there in quiet connection, two people brought together by circumstance, grief, and the unexpected magic of a baby who finally felt safe. And though neither of them said it out loud, both felt the unspoken promise that this encounter was only the beginning of something more, something neither of them could yet define, but both were eager to discover. As the plane emptied and the cabin lights dimmed, Ethan glanced at Jordan one last time before stepping toward the exit. Maybe we could talk again," he asked, the words tentative but hopeful. Jordan's eyes sparkled with a quiet warmth. "I'd like that," she replied. And with that, they moved into the bustling airport, leaving behind the chaos of earlier, carrying with them a peace they hadn't expected and a sense that the world, despite its grief and unpredictability, could still surprise them in the most beautiful ways. The airport buzzed with its usual energy, rolling suitcases, boarding announcements, people rushing to their next connection. But for Ethan, the noise faded into the background. He held Ava gently, careful not to wake her, while Jordan walked beside him, moving with the same calm, confident grace she had on the plane. It was surreal how quickly the tension from earlier had vanished. The woman who had taken a screaming, restless baby and turned her into a sleeping angel was walking beside him now, and Ethan couldn't shake the feeling that fate had orchestrated every moment of the flight for a reason. "Are you sure she's okay?" Ethan asked softly, glancing down at Ava. Jordan smiled, tilting her head to glance at the sleeping child. "She's perfect," she said simply. "She just needed someone to show her she was safe. And that someone is you." Ethan felt a warmth spread across his chest. Even after all these months of grief, all the sleepless nights, and the emptiness left by Emily, Jordan's words somehow managed to make him feel like he was doing something right. He wanted to believe it. They walked through the terminal together, and the conversation started to flow more naturally. Ethan asked about her life, her move to Los Angeles, her goals, and her dreams. Jordan spoke freely, a mixture of gentle humor and quiet wisdom, sharing her story without complaint or melodrama. She had been through loss, yes, but she carried herself with a resilience that Ethan found mesmerizing. There was a lightness to her, even when speaking of hard truths, and he felt drawn to it in a way he hadn't expected. At one point, a mother with a toddler walked by, and the child began to cry. Jordan instinctively paused, humming softly under her breath even though it wasn't her baby. Ethan watched her with fascination. "You do this naturally," he said quietly. "It's like instinct." Jordan shrugged lightly. "I've had practice," she said with a small smile. "But more than that, it's about noticing what they need before they can tell you. Babies are honest. They show you everything they feel. You just have to listen." Ethan nodded slowly, taking in her words. There was truth in them, and it resonated deeply. They reached the car pickup area, where Ethan's driver was waiting. The car pulled up with a soft hum, and Ethan set Ava gently into her seat. He turned to Jordan. "You're coming in for a moment, right?" he asked, trying to keep his voice casual but hoping she would say yes. Jordan hesitated for a second, then nodded. "Sure," she said, and the subtle warmth in her smile made Ethan's chest tighten. It was such a small gesture, yet it felt monumental. Once inside the house, Ethan carefully carried Ava into her nursery, placing her gently in the crib. The baby stirred slightly but didn't wake fully, letting out a tiny sigh as if acknowledging the safe space around her. Ethan turned to Jordan, feeling a wave of gratitude that went beyond words. "I don't know how to thank you," he said. "You've done more than anyone could have done. You've helped us." Jordan gave him a soft, reassuring smile. "You're doing it yourself," she said. "I just helped a little. Sometimes that's enough to make a difference." Ethan laughed quietly, though it was tinged with emotion. "A little? That was incredible. I've never seen her calm like that. Never." Jordan crossed her arms casually, but the softness in her eyes betrayed the modesty of her words. She felt safe. That's all. Ethan shook his head, marveling at her humility. "No, it's more than that. You gave me hope today. Something I haven't had in months." Jordan tilted her head, studying him. "Hope is contagious," she said simply. They moved to the living room, settling into the plush couches while Ava slept peacefully. The conversation continued, lighter now, filled with laughter and small stories, the kind that made time seem to slow down. Ethan realized he hadn't smiled this freely in weeks, hadn't laughed without guilt, hadn't felt the possibility of joy in the same room as someone else. Jordan's presence had shifted something fundamental within him, a reminder that life could still offer moments of unexpected grace. As the evening settled over Los Angeles, Ethan found himself walking Jordan to the door. He felt a strange mixture of hesitation and hope, unsure whether to say what he truly felt. I hope you don't mind me asking," he said slowly. "But would you like to meet us again? Maybe lunch? Coffee? I'd love for Ava to see you, and for me too." Jordan's smile deepened, genuine and warm. "I'd like that," she replied simply, as if no further explanation was necessary. Ethan felt a lightness he hadn't felt in months. Something in him whispered that this was the start of something meaningful, something real, and maybe even something lasting. Jordan waved, turning to walk toward her car, while Ethan watched, feeling a spark of possibility in a world that had recently felt so dark. Ava stirred slightly in her crib, her tiny eyes blinking sleepily, and Ethan leaned over to whisper, "We're going to be okay, baby girl. Really okay." Jordan's voice echoed softly in his mind as he watched her leave. Hope is contagious. He realized then that she hadn't just calmed Ava. She had calmed him. And perhaps, in time, she would do the same for everything else he thought he had lost. As he closed the door behind her, Ethan felt something he hadn't felt in months, a sense of beginning again. Not just for Ava, not just for him, but for all three of them, connected now by a single flight, a single moment of compassion, and a single black woman who had done the unthinkable, turned chaos into peace and grief into hope. And somewhere deep inside, he knew this was only the beginning of a story that neither he, Ava, nor Jordan would ever forget.